Peace and love, beautiful people. Salute. Salute. I am back with another episode of Black No Sugar. I feel like it's been a while, but I wanted to come back and discuss something that I found to be very interesting. I guess I will use that word. Very interesting concerning some sentiments expressed by 50 Cent, of all people. Now, there was initially a report that I had come across on Twitter that someone posted sharing these sentiments of 50 Cent and stuff like that. And then I went a little bit further and I ventured to find an article that basically divulged his sentiments regarding female rappers and basically the over-sexualization as it pertains to their representation in the music industry. Now, I'm going to share a little bit with you what the article that I came across on Vibe.com stated, okay? It said, 50 took a more conservative approach to how women rappers should move, as he feels over-sexualization is severely damaging female culture. Female culture. That's what it said there. And then the article goes on to say, he acknowledged that he has also made sexual songs in his career, but he pointed out the subtle and playful innuendos in his songs as the main difference, whereas a lot of women rappers now explicitly state the sexual acts in music. And then this is a direct quote from 50 that they post right here, and it says, quote, I was doing Candy Shop and Magic Stick like metaphors for sexual experience. Women rappers are flat out saying the experience in the music now. End quote. That was his statement that they entered right there. Now, what's interesting that I found in this particular article on Vibe.com is that later in that article, he basically pardons the behavior of those very women that he is castigating or at least calling out for, the over-sexual content. And he says a statement that basically pardons the actions. He says, oh, it's fun, which is why I think the females enjoy it. That's what he says later on in that very interview. Now, a lot of things here that I would like to posit that I think people in our community, particularly in our culture, can further question and further build on. Now, firstly, I'd say flat out that it's awfully odd, hypocritical, and downright absurd that 50 would be trying to spin this wheel on such an issue when, for the past 20 years, he has been a central player and spokesman, if you will, for all types of illicit themes in his music and representation as a whole as it pertains to Black people at his hand, right? His entire persona, moniker, presentation, all of that is built off of drug culture, prison culture, violence, self-hate, hypersexualized Black masculinity. I mean, you name it. I mean, for heaven's sake, his very name totes, the banner of someone that he took the name from that was, a member of the drug game. If this is not the goddamn pot calling a kettle, I don't know what is. What's going on here, 50? And not only has his prominence within this industry been based off of such a foundation of all types of illicit means and themes, but, it continues to rest upon that particular type of foundation. Still, to this day. Like he's forever associated himself with a gangster, quote unquote. Even while he's selling stocks for his vitamin water, even while he's being a series creator and whatever other ventures he's into, he still totes the 50 Cent. For heaven's sake, we still call the man 50, So it's like, where are we actually standing upon this? He has yet to drop that particular type of drug dealing, project stomping, I got shot 9 times and now I'm here persona. You feel me? Like, where has it gone? It's gone nowhere. It's still here. You know what I mean? So it's very strange to me. This man has made and continues to make millions off of the stereotypical, felonious, illegitimate, corrupt, degenerate black male fantasy that this whitewashed society loves to promote and convince the world is actually an identity and a part of black masculinity, right? He's bled the stereotype dry, you guys, and he receives droves and droves of support for it still, unfortunately, by many people of our culture. Now, when we put this into the context and framework of his recent comments expressing a sense of, ignominy towards female rappers, I think that we could easily see the folly at hand, okay, when it's put into this context. What's unfortunate here also for me is that, 50 Cent actually is not wrong. He's just hypocritical, duplicitous and unbalanced in his view. It's actually quite odd to see him, wake up from his own slumber and take a look around him and notice what someone else is doing, but never looking within at himself or that, at his own steps and track record and analyzing that for what it is, and then henceforth making the proper decisions to correct those things that he finds to be unworthy in other people or in other instances. But yes, he is not wrong at all. Black female representation in the entertainment industry is absolutely in a disgraceful and disgusting place, if I'm being quite honest. The women are, strippers. They are not artists. There is nothing that they can say or do without the imposition of sex. That is today's game. Okay? That's the music industry today. Everything is about the pussy. Everything surrounds the pussy. It's crazy out here. And nothing is new under the sun. We've long heard, the famous saying, sex sells, and we've long seen music being a sex-driven, attraction-based industry, that kind of galvanizes interests with images of, sexuality and everything like that expressed. And that's understood. But I feel like, the more time passes, the more the aim is to desensitize onlookers and audiences from reality via the mechanisms of sexuality. It's more mechanical, one's relationship to music and one's relationship to the quote unquote superstars. You know what I'm saying? It's very lineal, one-dimensional, very myopic. There isn't room to relate outside of themes of sex. It's very pornographic and quite abusive as well. Because these images are void of feeling and void of connection and void of, value or source of personality, there's a sense of vacancy that gets created between the person that is watching the content and the person that is putting out the content. Definitely a vacancy. There is no intelligence expressed by these particular artists. There is no inference about concepts surrounding things of value, family, growth, alignment, wellness, balance, grace. Those concepts do not exist in what we see positioned in today's music, hip hop, entertainment as a whole. In other words, there is no balance presented. There is no dynamic. Everything is one dimensional. Everything is on one path, in one voice, and monotonous. How is it that artists are being presented now as if they are sex dolls, inanimate objects of some sort, solely driven by and for the purpose of their own exploitation? How did we arrive at this point, you guys? It's a dis-ease, and the image that it generates and the image that it garners is one that leaves themselves as the artists and their viewers bereft of meaning and connection. And what is that saying to us societally, moreover? What is that saying to us on a larger scale? This type of dynamic that we see. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But yes, certainly 50 Cent is not wrong in his statement. However, the entertainment industry as a whole is in, a seemingly perpetual and unyielding state of paucity as it pertains to Black representation as a whole. 50 Cent calling this out, in my view, is a half-hearted, limited, circumscribed way to abdicate his own perpetuation of such myopic views of Black women, as showcased in his music and throughout his other works. And I also think that his view fails most of all, to call attention and awareness to the larger structure behind these depictions of blackness in entertainment. There is a multi-headed snake at work here, okay? In that you have the puppets like himself and the women that he's castigating, okay, who run and take the bait of these upper echelon people within the industry. They take the bait of selling the hyperbolic image of black feminine and black masculine subjectivity, criminality, over-sexuality, and everything else. Okay, they take that bait and they willingly partake in displaying those images and carrying those falsities out. Okay, and there are also the people who fund the poison, right? The folly and all of that, the destructive imagery, the people who house and create the basis off of which these stereotypes can be pumped out to the public. People who have, endless patience, right? The puppeteers, the puppet masters, if you will, with all types of endless patience for the public's inevitable infection, if you will, and inculcation by way of that corruption. They are very patient to say, okay, we'll keep making droves and droves of the same goddamn music. We'll keep pumping clones and clones of the same goddamn artists and pumping the same narratives about this particular culture of people. And they'll eventually take a liking to this, even if there's a little bit of tug and pull at first, even if there's a little bit of rejection at first. Ultimately, they'll take it on as second skin. Where is 50 Cent calling these people out? Okay? So him simply saying, the females are too explicit in their content is pretty much saying nothing at all to the system that reinforces the behavior by giving ridiculous amounts of money and promises of fame to our people who are easily enticed by those promises, and because of which are desperate enough to sell their souls, as the saying goes. He's no different from the hoes in the videos. He's no different from the female rappers he's putting on blast. Okay? He's on his damn hoe stroll just the same. Okay? He out here on his stroll too, and happily doing so. Let's not get it twisted. Just like these women were funded to put on their high heels and to bend over and bust it open, okay? Same way he was funded to tote his guns around and show displays of criminality against his own people and egged him on to talk about how many times he got shot. Oh, tell us again, 50. Oh, my God, 50. Yes. How many times did you get shot? Oh, my God, tell the story again, 50. That's the same people that funded you, bruh, and continue to. This is why he could sit back comfortably in his high chair or his perceived high chair, and rebuke what he deems to be over-sexuality on the part of female rappers. Okay, that's exactly why he is not calling among his statement for any real means of resolve. Okay, not only for the representation of the female rapper and how we go about doing that, what's the best way to get away from such narrow, limited concepts and views, but how black people are represented as a whole. He presented no resolve. He just waved his imaginary finger. Ain't that a shame? Look at these black women out here, over-sexualized. Ain't that something? And what's crazy is that women aren't the only ones being damaged by this imagery. So when he mentioned, the destruction of female culture, I don't even know what that means. As if women are the only ones watching and taking in this imagery. Black culture as a whole is suffering at the hands of this imagery. Okay, a woman shaking her ass, as seen time and time again in these videos, isn't only affecting girls and women who are watching, but boys and men who are equally being inculcated with the notion that hypersexualization is acceptable and should be sought after, and that a woman is only deemed attractive when engaging in or partaking in this particular type of behavior. Everybody's out here getting fucked up by this. Like, what? What are we missing here? What do you mean female culture is being damaged? We are being damaged as a people, as a collective, with this type of insidious, pernicious imagery. The women in the entertainment industry are out here doing it, and so are the men. Okay, with the constant references towards violence against members of their own community, to the glorification of going to jail, the sort of assumption of maleness or of manhood via the pathway to jail. That's what makes you a man. That's what gets celebrated. That's what makes you a G, quote unquote. That's what certifies your masculinity as a black man. And let's not forget the, crazy amount of hoes that you got running behind you. Okay. So this exploitation of the black femininity in itself has a duplicitous role in that, yes, it is via this femininity of the black female that you can assume and assert your own masculinity as a black man, but it is also this femininity that you disown, that you don't want, that you can throw away and disregard as trash or as less than or as disposable. Very complicated themes here that are being thrown around by black people, perpetuating the fantasies of white delusion that are backed by the notions of white delusion and the miseducation and self-hate that comes subsequent to that. All right. He posed no such inquiry into these types of dynamics here. Where is his concern for the warped, debauched portrayal of black masculinity, which is really the emasculation of the black man? Where's his concern for that? He did not call for a resolution to any of these problems. But there's an imaginary finger waving. Let me look as concerned as possible. Let me say something that could be perceived, as a semblance of consciousness about these particular types of things. It's flat and it's no, real talk. And he offered no such thing because he does not care. That's the reality of it. Okay. His bread and butter is being served to him on a marble table. Okay, he could care less about anything called a respect for or of the preservation of the unity of black culture or the integrity of black culture. He's getting paid to violate it. Okay, that's just the facts. Now, black people as consumers of his and of the entertainment industry as a whole have to begin to pose some serious queries because it is true that oftentimes we participate in our own madness. I find that we tend to water our madness. We speak invitingly to our madness even. We tend to it. We give it a sense of normalcy because it is familiar. And we are encouraged via outlets like the media, via politics, education, and all types of institutions to normalize it. In a lot of cases, we are incentivized to normalize it, And I've said in previous instances, the real work, I can't say it enough, the real work begins at home, home being literally the home being the self, home being the mind. Okay, that isn't up to anybody else to straighten and clean up but us on an individual level and on a cultural level. That's how we begin to change the narratives. That's how we begin to be able to call out what we do not accept and stand on the business that demands our representation be proper and fitting to us as a people. There's nothing monolithic about blackness. In fact, it is the most universal thing on the planet. There is nothing more diverse than blackness. So that our representation in whatever it is that we do should showcase and respect the nuances of our culture, of our history, and our identity. It is always moving. It is always changing. It is always leading. And our art, our politics, our education, our religious beliefs, all of that should express those subtleties. Why is it that we line up to accept the things given to us by a people and a system that does not respect the diverse expressions of blackness? Why are we lining up to support anything that relegates us to an image of degeneracy? What has our men out here glorifying the pimp, who gets over on all types of women and loves none of them? What's got us out here, having our women, thinking that the ass is the first thing and the last thing that a man should ever see, not her soul? What part about our support of this type of stuff accelerates and propels the culture forward? That's a serious question. From the music that we buy to the types of conversations that we have to how we engage in our own personal relationships, all of this is guided by these notions, whether we are aware of it or not. These things have seeped into the culture so that they have become a part of the culture. We don't have to accept, drug selling, gun toting individuals, as a means of, representative of what it means to be masculine. Why have we supported 50 on his journey to deem that, to claim that, and to promote that to us? Why are we still lining up for those of us that may be? The multi-headed snake that I mentioned earlier? Yeah. You got the part of the artists who are the front people and the spokespeople for the second factor, which is the system that perpetuates it and that formulates the basis off of which these ideologies can be pushed out and pumped into the consciousness of the people. And then you have the third, which is us, those that may be complicit, those that uphold it, and those that further perpetuate the things that we see, take it in, believe it, accept it, and promote it as culture, as we see within our community. So that there's an holistic view, there's an overall view that we need to be looking at here. It's not just simply from the perspective of 50 Cent on his high horse, looking down and saying, oh, well, it's just this one factor. No, there is a multiplicity of factors at work here. And I would even posit that the most prominent of them all is the position that we hold as consumers, because it is us who decides and funds and backs the folly. You know what I'm saying? Who ultimately decides if this is going to stay, if this is going to be further invested in, because we give it the importance and we give it the weight, because we put our dollars behind it or whatever have you, our eyes, our engagement behind it or whatever have you. If we as Black people, constantly line up to support garbage, take on garbage, how could we ever be rid of trash? When you look around and you see these Black entertainers, right? And you see that there is an industry behind them that you are feeding and making into the multi-million or multi-billion-dollar industry that it is. And that industry is based off of the degradation and berating of Black identity. Does that not give you pause? I don't know about you, but I don't accept entertainment for entertainment's sake. Oh, I'm just going to accept this because this is the standard. I think that that's a particular type of coma that our people have lulled themselves into, in addition to the system that carries it out. We have definitely participated fully and oftentimes willingly into that particular type of coma. And there are those who don't want to be awoken from that slumber. This is precisely who 50 Cent, Meg Thee Stallion, people like Sexy Red, and the slew of other people that we could name. This is precisely who they eat off of and serve up on a platter to their masters. I speak about culture a lot because I know how powerful it is for our people historically, how it's always been a very prevalent aspect to our nature. The culture is basically a compass of any people. And I think it's always important. I always try to surround my themes around the concept of us both redefining our culture and reestablishing and reconnecting with the roots of our past and the roots of our ancestors. And I think it's a conversation that should always be on a table, because there is great power that we are missing and bypassing when we refuse our history and when we refuse the significance and weight of cultural power, cultural unity, cultural education. What is Black culture in this country? To that I say, of course, it's made up of many things, many experiences. But within that, there is much that can and should be honestly analyzed and expelled where needed. I think that many of our people have an obsession, for example, with pain. One would think that, an experience of pain or trauma or difficulty of some sort would cause one to retreat into the shadows, right? To kind of hide and kind of become small and invisible. And it does, right? And there's also the other aspect, the other side of coping with pain, that causes quite the opposite reaction, right? It would cause one to seek, for example, the overt, right? The blatant, the ornate, the ostentatious, vulgar even, right? Basically in an effort to cloak what is perceived to be a weakness or a complex of some sort. And I think that many in our community gravitate toward this particular type of imagery, of course, going back to our topic at hand, because they want to invoke it in their own lives. Maybe there's a sense of wanting to come across as big, as, well, you can't possibly be small when you're big, right? You can't possibly be anything conceived of as fragile or compromised, right? That's kind of the thing. Maybe if I'm big, I'll be accepted. Maybe if I am big and loud, I'll be respected or taken seriously, right? And this is, of course, all happening within a framework or within a world that constantly has rejected you, that has historically rejected you. And so there's a wanting to separate from that image that's been given you. Then, there are layers and layers of this when we get into the psychoanalytics, which I very much enjoy. But, the point here really quickly is to draw the correlation between the collective experience of the culture of our people to the acceptance and subsequent perpetuation of the corruption of our own image via the history of the media and our relationship to entertainment and our representation as a whole within the society. There is the perception or the notion that the vulgar or the ostentations can usurp the feelings of being castigated or not accepted. And that's whether by our own people or by the society at large. And I'd posit that because of the precarious position that we've held within this country, our psyche stands to be further, as I mentioned in a previous commentary, susceptible to being desirous of or voracious for, the need of being seen in perceived positions of power or desirability. Okay. And that does not even matter if it's a drug dealer or a pimp or anything that, isn't necessarily a position to be glorified, but because it can be perceived of as you being the Mac or as you being the most fantasized about woman, we'll take that. We'll take the inflated, the overemphasized, aggrandized portrayals, just to feel, in association with some type of dominance. I think that's why it's worked for 50 Cent for the past 20 years. I think that's what has Cardi B successful. I think it's what had, Megan Thee Stallion able to get on a presidential stage for a candidacy and twerk for millions of people who are watching and it be accepted, in a large way. It's all of this is at work. But yes, all in all, 50 Cent's statement, though thrown to the wind and non-committed and completely lacked any soul or real care or concern, it's a concept nonetheless that should be discussed as broadly, as universally, and as honestly as possible among us. You know what I'm saying? I think all types of discussions should be had and held around our representation. It's very, very, very important. And real talk, when's the last time we heard a Black entertainer as popular as 50 Cent say something like that, right? Usually these celebrities will corset, the system. They'd placate to the standard. At least 50 Cent said something, okay? He didn't give a goddamn, but at least something was said on a public basis that generated some interest. I mean, it caught my attention, and I don't follow 50 Cent. I just came across it on Twitter, so it's circulating and it's garnering some attention. So even though it was, limited and non-committed to finding any real solution, you know what I'm saying? At least something was said. At least something was put out in the airwaves. Who else? What other celebrity is talking about that? Who else is addressing Black female rappers or Black people in general in the music industry for these types of expressions and images? Does any Black industry person have an opinion on it? I mean, shit, it feels like the movie Get Out, where everybody is complicit and hush-hush, like the damn teacup's been tapped. Oh, we can't say nothing about that. You know what I'm saying? Tiptoeing around the issue. That's what's been normalized. Why is it so easy to quell the disgraceful behavior of Black artists by saying things like, oh, well, these are the times, these are the modern times. It just is what it is. That's crazy to me. Do we allow female rappers, for example, pulling off of 50 Cent's claim, do we allow female rappers and other people to promote debasement simply off of the premise and the guise that it's quote unquote modern or hip or, the way to express things now in the 21st century? Do we lie to ourselves and call what we see empowerment? As I've heard time and time again, oh, it's empowering. How? To whom? You feel me? Likewise, do we remove and negate the responsibility from the system, as aforementioned, that reinforces and creates the framework for these damaging perspectives about Blackness, sex, self-worth, authority, gender, male-female dynamic, relationship to one's community, etc., etc.? Where is the line? Are we complicit or not? What do you think about it? Because everything simply ain't for the culture, right? Black, no sugar, please.